close. Webcam, microphone, up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, pistols and fondle slap of choice, and internet, professional wrestlers, and not just Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from, as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information, because seriously, they don't want you to have just read two sources whenever I try to prove out, you know, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions? Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2-3, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for...
That's that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And good evening, UCY.TV radio listeners. We are live. This is the Ochelli Effect. I'm Chuck Ochelli. So, every Tuesday night I do the Liberty Beacon night. We're going to change up things a little bit. But, of course, I'm going to do my best to bring on Mr. Landry as soon as I can. I got to tell you, it was a strange sort of day for me, and I was not too thrilled with the information that a comedy voice like Robin Williams, who I found rather interesting and was somebody who was part of the stream of consciousness for me ever since I was a child, had taken his own life. But then again, it seems to me as though a lot of the greater, more tortured type artists do this. But we will get into that discussion later on in the program when I bring on Terry Joyce, and I believe also Leslie Carroll Botha will join me as well to discuss all that. But first, let's see if I can get Mr. Landry. Now, I know things have been a bit odd lately, and I've got definitely a lot more oddity to bring you very, very shortly. There will be some interesting presentations on the show coming up. I assure you that will probably lose me a couple of listeners, but hey, let's keep the string going. I kind of like doing the different things once in a while. But as usual, Tuesday, the Liberty Beacon. And I believe I have Roger Landry with me now. Roger. Maybe not. Let's see. Nope, it's still trying to reach him. I try and do these things, and I try and time things out and make it sound professional once in a while, or at least semi-professional. And what I end up with is the contradiction, right? And I know this isn't even Roger's fault. I'm not sure if he was completely ready for me, because there is a time difference, and every once in a while we do get tripped up, but I think I've got him. Well, let's see what happens. Also, the phone lines will be open. It appears as though they were working, because during my intro I was receiving a call from someone in, I think it was the 213 area code, and so I do believe that we are functioning this time with the phone calls, unlike the show I did with John Barber where I called for phone calls and apparently a couple of you tried to get through and could not. Sorry about that, guys. I can't control all the technology. I really wish that somebody had gotten in on that show, because although it was great to listen to Mr. Barber and discuss all of the interesting topics in the world, and also his new Facebook page book, which is kind of interesting. They just took his posts from Facebook and turned them into something. They've gotten actually a lot more extreme over the years. So, now we're going to see stuff being published about Israel and a lot of the stuff that he had to say, and you guys heard it on Saturday night if you were listening. If you didn't, of course, go back to the MP3s at ucy.tv/TOE, and you can find them by date right there. Of course, I do post to the SoundCloud later on. And thank you guys again for listening in on the iTunes Radio, the TuneIn apps, and etc., etc. Appreciate all of that. And although I do like driving some of you crazy, I also like the fact that even the most angry listeners I have seem to listen to a lot of what is being said on my show. And, even though you guys like the guests a whole lot better than the host, it's quite all right by me. I'm just enjoying being a part of this and being a part of the stream of consciousness, let's just say, in the internet age. Oh, boy, oh, boy. Anyway, let us see if somehow we can reach Mr. Landry one more time. And if not, we shall see what else we can do. I don't have any clips to play because my capacity to play clips has been challenged pretty badly lately. I've had some computer issues, of course. Well, appears as though I'm broadcasting, but can't seem to hook people in. Anyway, this has been an interesting sort of attempt to put this together. Hello. Let's see if we can just add somebody else on. If this keeps up, I swear to God, I'm just going to wind up doing what I used to do in New York City in the late 90s, which is I would go to open mic nights where they had poetry readings. Actually, not open mic nights all the time, but sometimes there were organized sort of coffee house poetry reading style things that went on. And, of course, I would go up there without any sort of notes or anything because, as some of you might know, I'm visually challenged, so it was, ridiculous for me to try and pin a piece of paper to my forehead practically to try and read it. Let's see. Okay. Let's get this online. Alright. Yes, I see you. I'm going to bring you in. Let's just see. Alright. Also, an odd message from Barry Prince earlier. I didn't quite understand you, Mr. Prince, but if you're looking to join in on the discussion tonight, I have no problem with that as well. Great guy over there. Apparently, they're launching, they're going to launch that new network very shortly, and we will see the Shake and Wake. We will see the Shake and Wake radio network come to fruition very, very soon. And that's going to involve a lot of the people from the Liberty Beacon. And, still trying to call Roger Landry, by the way. That's why I sound so distracted and stupid. Well, anyway, as I was saying, in the later 90s, I used to do a lot of these sort of extemporaneous poetry readings where I just went in there and went off the top of my head to speak about the topics of the day or whatever happened to be on my mind, the struggle of the struggler, so to speak. And that's what I used to do, and I would definitely evoke reactions from the crowd. I don't know how well that would translate to radio because I don't have the use of body language, lighting, or mood, or even the foolish sort of hubris-filled fools that would stand before me and that would go on stage in front of me in order to set up what I had to say, because everything I had to say had a different sort of slant on it and definitely had a very dark but still very viable, very legitimate sort of honest tone to it, which they did not. They were pontificating for the purposes of trying to create imagery, trying to push a persona which was not necessarily their own. It was not the most legitimate thing in the world to watch some of these people who wanted to be poets of sorts who wanted to be speakers to a generation, speakers for a generation, and attempting to be, the profound speakers on that stage. It was kind of funny to watch them struggle and flop around, and also be very impressed with themselves until the audience would get a hold of them. So I used to enjoy that, and then I would go out there and it would kind of twist things around, because either I would be faced with people who didn't understand what I had to say, or thought that I was just, one of these guys who happened to have a bad case of schizophrenia and maybe a little touch of, what was the name of that disease now, where people used to just curse for no reason? Dear God, I can't remember it, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Oh, Tourette's syndrome, that's right. So a touch of Tourette's syndrome along with a bit of, what would you call that? A bit of psychosis, similar to, but not exactly the same as schizophrenia, which a lot of people still misunderstand the definition of schizophrenia. But it's not the split personality disorder that some people still foolishly believe it is, although it can be at the end of the day one of the results. So let's just see. One more time. Okay. Okay. It looks as though Mr. Landry definitely has internet problems, and we shall see what else we will do then. All right. This was not part of the plan to be discussing poetry nights in the 90s and stuff, but hey, what can you do? All right. Let's see if by some chance we can grab Terry just a little early here. I'm sure she's busy, but let's just see if we can, by some strange possibility, grab Terry early. Because as I said, I did want to discuss the life, death, and work of Robin Williams, but okay. And I figured that since she is a stand-up comedian, it would be most interesting. But, well, fun with Skype, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, so back to those dark days. It was pretty interesting to see what I would call posers of one sort or another trying to perpetrate their attitudes, their platitudes, and their hubris-filled sort of pseudo-philosophy on audiences, and watch them reject it. Sometimes you had people speaking in a rather intellectually interesting way, but then they would always fall into the trap of politicizing, or not necessarily politicizing is fine, but when you're just parroting the political idiosyncrasies of other people instead of actually critically thinking for yourself, it does become laughable. And even this one, I wasn't very awake, so it is what it was. And of course I did that at the same time that I was a musician and trying to write different things, and also participating in my assassination research, which grew into other political research and varied projects, including, studying cults and mind control and stuff like that. And that does remind me, I do have some interesting things coming up on the show shortly, just so you guys know. There will be a show where we're going to focus on astrology for a bit and actually discuss the meaning of and all of these things that are often sort of bandied about the internet as memes and as astrological sort of fallacy, and et cetera, et cetera. Also, I do have somebody coming on from the actual Church of Satan. They're going to come on, and we're going to discuss that, especially regarding their position about the Hobby Lobby decision. remember this, folks. When you support the freedom of others, you also support other people's freedom to be as they are, whether you agree with them or not, so long as they don't harm you. So I wanted to get their side of the story, especially because on a lot of other venues, not my own show too often, but on a lot of other shows, I hear mentions and allusions to Satanism, devil worship, and all of that. And meanwhile, nobody ever does really talk to these guys and actually discuss, what the organized satanic movement actually believes, etc., etc. Of course, my sympathies are a bit different than the average. I'm not a Christian. I've identified that before. I'm also not a Satanist, but it doesn't mean that I believe that their right to be as they choose to be should be dismissed easily simply because of the disagreeable nature of it. In fact, I generally defend the speech of individuals that I disagree with a whole lot more than I do the people I agree with, because after all, I would want the same, and I think that's really the character that this country was founded upon. Not necessarily the Judeo-Christian sort of hard-line paranoia that a lot of the right-wing pundits like to carry out. Anyway, signal is not still. Yeah, I see that. We're going to continue to try to pull people in, and let us see. Let's see if I can get Roger anyway. One more time. Now, there may be a problem here with his signal going in or out, and I think that's the reason why I can't connect to him. It's actually not the Skype's fault this time. It may just be his internet, but we shall find out shortly. There you go. Sorry, it is hard for me to talk when I've got to put so much energy into trying to visually interpret the things on my screen. I do apologize for that, guys. I'm not super professional with it. I do try. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. All right, so back to the stuff that I said will be coming up on the show also. Lee Camp has agreed to appear on the show, but we haven't nailed down a date exactly yet because I want to do it live, and the taping for broadcasting is not something I enjoy doing. I made that exception once with Ernst Titovitz because of considerable time difference, and I thought it was important to bring you guys that interview, but I really don't like to do that. I don't want to tape to broadcast. I'd rather be able to interact with you guys, take calls, etc., etc., which, by the way, the phone lines are open, 718-717-8296, and anybody that wants to join in and possibly, comment about anything at all. I mean, where are we at? Well, we're still in the same place we were last week as far as the Middle East goes. We're still watching this, this nonsensical dance going on about ISIS, ISIL, is, whatever the hell it is you want to label the yet another Islamo-fascist group that was funded by our military and intelligence assets, actually supplied by them, and then propped up as the inevitable boogeyman. Now they're trying to push in the mainstream, of course, in between the tributes to Robin Williams, that the idea that ISIS is actually much more dangerous and much more volatile to world peace than Al-Qaeda, of course, which is their former boogeyman that they can no longer sell to even the most dumbed down of Americans, that's for sure, or Merkins, in Obama land. It's really part of the failing of the mainstream that they can't sell the boogeyman anymore. Now they're going to try and build up this one. Now, of course, because of the demonization of the pagan gods and the ideal that any of the the Arabic people that are involved in the Islamic faith, that are involved in, take your pick, either a freedom fighter or a terrorist movement in one way, shape, or another, are actually a huge threat to you and me sitting here, when really what they're doing is attacking and taking over areas in a completely disjointed Iraq that we broke into little pieces so that it would be much easier to control, because we wouldn't have this uncooperative guy, Hussein, which, I still got a lot of questions about what actually happened to him. Of course, we all saw the film of him being hanged and showing up with the big beard and being found in a hole with, God knows, Twinkies or something. Yeah, it's really gotten to a point of silliness, though. I mean, how is it that you guys sell this stuff? I mean, how is it that people keep a straight face? At the same time, of course, we have the situation just outside of St. Louis, which they are now again harping on the race card. When meanwhile, I have been very upset by and have been listening to many a person across many different networks who are speaking, in the sort of freedom sect of broadcasting at this point, about the concept of police brutality and the militarization of the police, et cetera, which is not a black and white issue. It is an us and them issue. And trust me when I tell you, it really does not matter the color of your skin if you don't have one of those authorizations to kill, to abuse, to intimidate, to maim, which comes along with the badge and a sanctioned firearm on your side, along with the so-called authority, which has been given, by fiat rule and so on and so forth. I mean, I always say that to protect and serve is definitely a lost concept. And hey, what else can we say? We all know about this. I don't think it's a matter of black and white. Unfortunately, this was a black kid who was killed, and there's some dispute as to what actually happened, what the witnesses actually say. That is the reality in any of these situations. And again, watching the mainstream, of course, they had, what's his name, Lemon there, who was the, one of the newer CNN people sitting there and talking to the family. And, I just hope that nobody says that this was a crisis actor sort of situation that was, created out of nowhere, because I'm getting really sick of that particular story arc as well. Let's see. Okay. We will attempt. And meanwhile, like I was saying, the continuous and, ever-increasing presence of the militarized police force being armed by, the surplus weapons from the DOD, being granted the authority or so-called authority. Oh, Roger. There you are, sir. How are you tonight?
I was doing quite well until I tried to get on Skype and found that my internet was going in and out on like 50 to 60 second intervals.
My. I'm sorry about that, Roger. I was just, looking forward to talking to you and everything tonight, and I wound up just sort of ranting a little bit about current events so far. But you sound all right now, and it seems as though your signal's good, so I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, so do I. And it was that Terry I saw here?
Well, Terry's going to join me in the second hour. I was trying to grab her early because I couldn't pull you into the call. So I tried to grab her early, but I guess I'll have to wait. Because, of course, we're going to discuss Robin Williams, actually, a little bit. And,
Right.
I'm rather saddened. I don't know if you heard, but apparently comedian, actor Robin Williams died. And
Passed away. Yeah.
Apparently of an apparent suicide as being reported thus far. But who knows how much of that we can really trust. I've got questions right away. Because, anyway, I'll get into that later. But in the meantime, I was also discussing the situation in Missouri. The instance where we have a racial sort of, theme being developed by the media and the outlying assets of the media. When meanwhile, I've explained many times that we have all been concerned, those of us who have the concept of freedom in our minds have been very concerned about the increased militarization of the police force, the emboldening and the arrogance of the institutions that the police forces have been around this country. There have been a great many police abuses where, I got to be honest with you, I didn't even take into account the race of the victims. I was merely looking at the victims as my fellow citizens, and really don't have a care in the world as to whether this is a racial incident or not, because it is yet again another instance where probably there was excessive force and it is being institutionally supported. And this is not the country again that I thought that I thought I was born into. It is, however, the country I did grow up in. So,
right. Well,
there. But meanwhile, I discussed a few things. Also went over briefly the whole ISIS narrative, which I know you've actually paid attention to quite a bit. And ISIS, ISIL, IS, and of course now the new sort of wave of media is all about how they are obviously a much more dangerous and vicious organization than Al-Qaeda ever was. So now we have a new boogeyman, and of course they're going to invoke even images of, and repetitiously invoking images of crucifixion, beheading, human trafficking, etc., etc. And this is, of course, the new wave of mainstream madness to try and keep us in fear. So, yet again, a little more fear-based programming. Let's not forget to divide and conquer us, because it's a racial incident when the police are brutal. And this is the condition of the world. And, I almost, and this is going to sound like a really flippant, nasty thing to say, but you know what? A guy who appeared to be rather sensitive like a Robin Williams, you almost don't blame him for wanting off the ride. When we're looking at a world around us like this. And I hate to sound like that, but I'm in that kind of mood today where I'm just sick and tired of watching the foolishness, of watching the destructive nature of people that have too much power, and the lack of an ability for anyone to seem to, outside of those of us who are trying to speak out and who are trying to utilize our intellectual capacity to enlighten and to literally free the minds of our fellow man. Outside of us, the rest of the walking, sleepwalking, masses, don't take notice of that. They're just fine with this very sick little world because they have their eyes closed. And I guess, I'm sorry, I'm in a negative sort of mood, Roger. I apologize.
Oh, don't be, because what you're doing is something that I do on a weekly basis, and I'm about to start a second rant that on a new network that will be coming. Actually, I think my first show will be on Sunday, so I'm going to be I'm doing 2 rants a week, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, 2 different networks. But what you're talking about, and the reason why so many people seem to be insensitive to it, is because governments and programs, such as, I believe I told you last week, in 1981, William Casey made a comment, we will know that our disinformation program has succeeded when everything the American people believe is a lie. So they don't do things overnight. Things are done generationally, or they are done over decades. Because if you slam something in the face of a culture or society like America, immediately you'll get pushback. But if you inch forward a little bit each year, each decade, each generation, eventually you reach a targeted goal. The targeted goal for the last 50 years in this country has been the dumbing down of America. And it has it's been quite a successful campaign when you consider that minute changes have happened year after year after year, but these changes are all cumulative. And what we are seeing now is a culmination of all of these programs, the progress they have made. They're all reaching their ultimate goal.
Yeah, they're about
And
to reach their zenith because they learned the lesson of the boiling frog, okay? And everybody talks about this. Everybody talks about it philosophically. If you turn up if you decide you want to boil a frog and you boil the water right away and throw the frog into it, boy, that sucker will jump out. But, if you do gradually turn up the heat, it probably won't. And this is really what they've done to the minds of the people in this country and, in fact, internationally. And William Casey, just in case people don't know, and I'm sure people that listen to me do know, but the fact is William Casey spoke a lot of little nuggets of truth there before he disappeared off the scene.
Oh, he did.
Okay.
He did, yes.
And yeah.
One of the biggest issues that we all face, and everybody's going to immediately think I'm talking about ISIS, or I'm talking about the Middle East, or I'm talking about the southern border, or I'm talking about GMOs or vaccines. I'm not. One of the most paramount issues we have in this country today, and it was the article I wrote for this show today and published. It's already up on the Liberty Beacon. One of the biggest issues I see in this country today is the dumbing down of America through the education of our children. Because when you have grasped, when you have taken over or overwhelmed the minds of the children, within one generation you control a population. And this has been underway for about a decade, and it is accelerating today. So would you like to hear a little bit more about that, or would you like to go off onto something else? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, it just gave me a little trouble clicking my mute button off.
Okay.
I was trying to type. I wanted to go to the article because I wanted to go through that article with you. So
okay, the name of the article is The Dumbing Down of America, Mission Accomplished. You can find it on my wall. You can find it on the Liberty Beacon page. You can find it on the Liberty Beacon website. Okay, The Dumbing Down of America, Mission Accomplished. Now, there's 4 videos included in this article. And I will explain those to you as I get to the bottom of what is a relatively short article. So this is only going to take about 4 or 5 minutes to go through. Okay, so let's start off with the title one more time. The Dumbing Down of America, Mission Accomplished, with a question mark after it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
There was a point in our history when Americans were considered among the most well-educated and aware societies on this planet. Those days are gone. The American system of education is now a global joke, as it should be. And the most dangerous aspect of this realization is this is intentional. Common Core is supporting curriculum now, and it is now the purveyor of the American educational standard. And it is growing in influence daily. This departure from the well-proven system of teaching is written and implemented via the corporatocracy and propagated by entities such as Bill Gates, not by the long-established system of education. So the standards for our education today are being written by corporatists. Believe it or not, they are. Not people with degrees in education, degrees in teaching, corporatists. Why are they doing that? Next paragraph. The goal of this endeavor is to churn out average students capable of satisfying the needs of said megacorporations without the ambition, knowledge, or drive to challenge the system. People who are unaware of what freedom, liberty, and unbridled ambition truly are will not strive for it, and the end result is a passive, complicit population that knows its place in the hierarchy. That's a rather blatant comment, but let me continue. The days of parents involved in the education of their children, helping with homework or staying in contact with the educators, and I'm not saying no parents do this, I'm saying it happens a lot less frequently. But why? Well, these days are almost gone because more and more parents must work longer hours and even multiple jobs to maintain a reasonable standard of living. This is a mistake beyond reckoning. We trust and accept that the education our children are receiving is the best and complementary to their future needs, and nothing could be further from the truth. The education presented today is no longer in the best interest of our children. It is in the best interest of this corporatocracy facilitating that education. And this does not bode well for our children or their future. Okay? Now let's talk about these videos, because that's the body of text on the article. The following videos are the videos that you will find contained within this article, if you go look it up, are 4 videos of individuals approaching random people either on university campuses, high school campuses, or just out on the street, asking them questions that any American should know. I watched an entire video where at least a dozen people were asked, what does D.C. mean in Washington, D.C., and not one could answer the question. When the commentator in another video asked the public, and these were all either college or high school students, name a country that starts with U, not one of them said United States of America. And half of them, literally half of them, came up with a fictitious country called Utopia. They can't tell you where the Middle East is. They can't tell you which nations belong to Great Britain. They can't tell you the language spoken in Great Britain. They can't tell you simple questions that you, Chuck, and myself, and most people from your generation through my generation could not graduate from high school without that basic knowledge. We couldn't pass. No. We would be set back. The average, and I won't say intellect, because intellect is no less today than it was in my day. The average knowledge in the minds of the average student graduating from high school or college today is shocking. It is shocking. Your turn, my friend.
Well, I don't find it all that surprising. You see, again, incrementally these things change. And I'm going to give you an example of where it changed from your generation and my generation even. See, they would have tried to educate you if you were in that sort of condition and you were in the midst of high school and you weren't able to understand where the Middle East was on a globe. We saw not too long ago people could not find the Ukraine. They were all in favor of going into war over there in the Ukraine, but they could not find it. Some of them actually placed it within the borders of the United States of America on a map, okay? Utopia, that I really had to suppress laughing at, okay? But I don't find it all that hard.
Watch the video.
I believe you because you said it, but I've got to tell you that it's mind-numbing to me. Now, in my day, they started another practice where they started to push people aside who couldn't sort of grasp this by the time they were in high school. They gave them the option to leave, even though technically by law you were supposed to have your parents' permission in order to quit high school and all that kind of stuff. Quitting high school was now no longer a shame. It was just something that was done. They pushed aside a lot of these guys so that the state testing scores wouldn't come down, so they wouldn't lose their funding, because, of course, we have the federal funding that needed to go into a lot of schools. And this is what happened during my generation. Nowadays, however, it seems as though they will just simply, alter the paper. You still get a high school diploma even if you can't read the thing. It's astounding. And then, what is it that they think they're going to accomplish? Well, let's be logical about this. Does anyone believe that someone with half a brain, someone who is not insane, would they believe for a moment that this would be beneficial to the workforce, that this would be beneficial to the society? Absolutely not. You're looking at not the side effect, not the problem, but you're looking at the actual strategy. So, yeah, mission is accomplished, ? Only because, is there a possibility we can dig our way out of this? That's the thing.
What we see here, and I started this off by making an accusation. I started this off by saying, basically almost at the beginning of my my article here, that this is being perpetrated by the corporatocracy. It is. It is, in fact. As a matter of fact, Bill Gates, my God, how often does his name come up whenever evil is spoken about, is very, very, very involved, very deeply involved with Common Core. Okay?
Mhm.
Common Core is being railed against in community after community after community around the nation. People are starting to push back against it. But the school systems won't eject it. A few have, but not enough. Won't eject it from the curriculum simply because with the state of the economy today, most states are barely squeaking by with the services they're required to provide. And when the government dangles that carrot in front of your face and says, here's a couple of $1 million, institute Common Core, and spend this money on education. Well, what you find is that through the complicity of even state representatives and governors and administrators, you find that money means more to them than the actual education of our children. So what we have here, is we used to have a system that encouraged the best and the brightest to excel, that encouraged the mediocre to do the best they could, and that helped those who had a lot of trouble learning at all to at least attain a basic level whereby they could survive out in society. That is gone. Now everybody is seen on a level playing scale. We have gone from a multifaceted, multicolored educational system to a vanilla educational system where nobody, because they feel it would hurt the feelings of others if you were shown anything special because you excelled too much. Believe me, I'm not joking about this. And if you can't grasp, well, they can't make you feel bad in front of an entire classroom of children. So everybody has been put, the upper level and the lower level have been brought down and up. So now we have a vanilla educational system. And what is the end result of that? That is, why should I try to get ahead? It's not going to get me anything more than the guy who sits there and barely gets by gets. What we're talking about is a system of socialism. This was seen across Russia. It was seen across China. Every large socialist experiment. Look at Cuba. Look at Cuba. Okay? I mean, really go there and look at the place. And what you find is that since the government guarantees you a specific level, why should you bust your hump to exceed that level when you're not going to gain anything from it? This is what our children are being taught. What does this do? It makes a whole lot of great worker bees, but it doesn't turn out hardly anybody with the ambition to challenge the system. And this is what they want. They want a caste who knows their place and will not challenge the system.
See, and I noticed that you're using words like caste. Take a look at the caste system if you want. Check that out, okay?
Yes.
Please look that up. And in fact, you know what? Let me just give a little thing here, and I say this often. I don't care. I'll keep saying it because it seems as though people miss it. When we're talking about a corporatocracy, when we're talking about the corporation being more important than the person, when we're talking about the government being ruled by the corporation...
Wait, corporations are people!
Yeah, of course, there are people. That's another fun little thing to go into for the next 3 days. But
sorry about that.
No, it's okay. But let us not forget that this was exactly what Benito Mussolini said fascism was. Sorry, but I got to refer to the Italian, all right? Since he did know what it was, he was quite sure that this is exactly what it was. And tell me how it is we differ from that model at this point in time. Well, we do have a constitution and all of that, but, you know, if that's just being ignored like the other things, what's... Okay?
We have a constitution, but the one that we're actually, that Congress is actually operating under right now is not the original constitution. And again, how many people are even aware of that?
Right. We're
not talking about the organic constitution here.
Oh, no, let's differentiate there as well. But... But this is the problem, and you're exactly right. But you know what? Welcome to the age where political correctness has run amok.
Absolutely.
It is not to say that someone who is incapable of learning should not be given a fair shot. That's not what any of us are saying, I'm sure. The idea here, though, is that, there used to be an effort to sort of work with the disability of someone. Guess how I know this? Because, again, I went to school in a totally different generation. So, you know what? I had difficulty in a history class I was in high school because there was a lot of reading and a lot of writing that needed to be done. Now, what happened was I was forced to do presentations in front of the class. Instead of having the written grade that others had, I was given that option so that I could utilize my ability to speak and to demonstrate certain things about particular historical events. That is what my teacher based my grade on and took away all of the other things that other people could get credit for that were more visually accessible to someone who had better vision than myself. So what she did was she changed the way my presentations were done, but I still had to learn the same stuff. Okay.
Right.
So I would have to do a presentation, say, once a week, where maybe there were, 3 or 4 different written assignments that other people could do. My spoken word presentations, though, in all honesty, contained more material than most of those written assignments. But that is exactly how I was graded, and that was done for me, not because I was dumber than the other kids, but I did have a little bit of a different sort of situation. But what teachers had to do at that point was to work toward their students, was to work to educate them one way or another. If they didn't have certain abilities, they used other abilities. If they hadn't learned certain things up to this point in their schooling, they were told to do what was called remedial teaching. They would have to rebuild, like say they didn't read on the level they needed to. They would try and increase their reading skills. If they didn't write on the level that they were supposed to, or they didn't understand their foreign languages the way they were supposed to, whatever they were told to do remedial education to add to that student's array of abilities by attempting to teach them. Okay, others have missed here. This person has gotten this far, but now you need to reinforce what they should already have. And they were actually made to make improvements in people's knowledge. That's gone. That's completely gone.
Well, it is gone. And again, all of this is being done intentionally. But let's put that with, let's put that with the constant barrage of media, entertainment. Let's put that with the school system. Let's put that with the fact that parents, in order to maintain even a entry level into the middle class, lower middle class standard of living today, must work an average of 60 hours, where you used to be able, and both parents have to work, where you used to be able to accomplish that with one parent working 40 hours a week a generation ago. If you take all of these issues and you put them together, what you find out is they culminate at a point in history we call today. We are seeing the culmination of the dumbing down of America, and it has been a multi-pronged attack.
Well, right, Roger. Let me just interrupt you real quick, though. Middle class, sure. attempting to live the good life, attempting to live, a solid. Forget it, man. This is not even part of the equation for most people. Realistically, survival is what is part of the equation at this point. The actual ability to put enough food to feed a family on a table is not even something that's, this is long before you can get to the idea of even remotely approaching what used to be middle class, okay? And it seems to me as though the middle class is a residual myth at this point, because it's no longer a class of people, it's a very small minority, okay? And the thing is that survival is what it's come down to. It's not choices where, I just want to live in the better house, so therefore I'm working more. It's not, I want to have the better car, so this is why I'm working more. It's no longer a choice. It is now a matter of survival. You can't survive on what is, minimum wage, what is entry level, what is even, considered a remotely good sort of wage earning position in any field at this point, outside of being part of the deep corporatocracy, outside of entering into the more inside levels of the corporate world, outside of being maybe a banker, things like that. But if you're now average guy with average job, survival is something that you are more often confronted with than you ever were. This is not a matter of middle class anymore. Middle class is just, it's just one of those, it's the American dream that nobody ever bothered to understand that they were sleeping through while it was disappearing. It's gone too.
I call the middle class something that sailed on the USS used to fish.
Nice.
As in it used to be. But there are a couple of points you've made that I would like to discuss a little bit. Okay,
please.
We're talking about a middle class, okay, or the disappearance or disappearing middle class. I read a report not too long ago that stated that as many as 20% of what is considered today by today's standards, the middle class, require credit cards just to pay their monthly bills. So in other words, in order to maintain my standard of living, I have to continually go more and more into debt. All right? That's not maintaining your standard of living. That's digging a hole deeper and deeper and deeper every month. Okay? Now, let me give you a little bit of stark reality. All right? 35 states in the United States. 35 states. If you are on welfare and you are receiving medical benefits and you are receiving food stamps, if you take the cost of those medical benefits to somebody who's working, say, on an assembly line in a Ford motor plant or a GM motor plant, whatever, if you take the value of that medical, if you take the value of the food you purchase with those food stamps, if you take the amount of money that is given to you to survive, depending on how many children you have, the average welfare family is roughly four children. If you take all three of those sums and total them up, it is much more beneficial in 35 states today to be on welfare than to try and survive on an entry-level job in that state. What we have today is a majority of the population that is dependent in one fashion or another on the government. When a people is dependent on the government, they can no longer call themselves a free people, because all the government has to do is say, we're going to do this. And if you say, well, I don't like that, they're going to say, how would you like to keep your benefits? Bam! You will fall into line. If that's all you know, and that's the way you have lived a majority of your life, or even a recent majority of your life, 5-6 years, you will fall in line. So what we have is an intentional program that has inched down our throats to the point right now where the middle class is gagging on it. When 35% or a vast majority of this country, it is more beneficial to be on welfare and collect the associated benefits than to go out and work. How else can you explain this, Chuck?
Well, see, that's the thing. This is the emergence, the design to create the dependent class. This is a dependent class. See, now you actually have a class of people. Okay,
and it was the change we were promised. Well, it was the change we were promised.
But see, now here's the thing. I absolutely refuse, though, to accept the concept that this is something that came into being, under the presidency of Obama. This did not come.
Oh, no. But we were promised change. We were promised change. You got to remember, we were promised change under Reagan.
Thank you.
We were promised change. Right. Yeah, we were promised change under Clinton. We were promised change under Carter. We were promised. It's just that Obama screamed it louder than anybody else did.
Yeah, he sure did. He sure did, and had people chanting it and everything else. Yeah. But, when people do bring up change, they often refer right to Obama, and I keep trying to tell them, man, this is not where it started. Don't tell me that this was the roots of it. This is the culmination of it, though. We're looking at... Go ahead.
This plan started in 1913 with the advent of the income tax and the institution of the Federal Reserve, and it went into overdrive in 1933 when one government program after another was instituted to put Americans to work. In any country on this planet that has suffered a depression, and in any other depression, because we've had several prior to the Great Depression that occurred in this country, any nation, including the United States, came out of that depression much quicker with the government staying the hell out of it. When the government gets involved, it not only slows down the recovery, but it starts to enslave the people. They become more and more dependent. So this plan has been underway in overdrive since 1933, not since Obama got elected.
Thank you. I'm very, very glad that you said that, because I'm telling you, I'm tired of arguing that point. This guy is really marginal compared to the design of this plan that has been going on ever since previous to World War II. There's some people that trace it back to World War II, and I try and tell them, listen, man, this is a post-World War I problem. And in fact, when you go back to 1913, you can see the inception right there.
That's right.
Very much, this was the refinement, not even the inception truly. Let me correct myself there. This was the refinement of the control process.
Well, the actual inception, or the inception of this concept, was in 1871, whereby in the Act of 1871, the United States became a corporation. At that point, the actual ruling, I didn't say governorship, the ruling of America became the privilege of the caste who in fact owned the corporation. And what was their inception? To bleed the most powerful middle class. Even at that point, we had a phenomenal middle class. America was becoming industrialized like the world had never seen. To bleed the average American of all of the wealth they could get. What we're seeing is the end result of 130 years of process.
And see, this is where I get down to, and I get criticized for it, but I say it all the time anyway, and I'll continue to say it. The fact is, we did not see the emancipation of slavery. We did not see the ending of slavery, the abolishment. We saw the expansion of slavery.
And we saw the institution of white slavery. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And this time, they gave us the concept of free-range slavery. Now there was no longer the need to have a plantation where you housed your slaves, because you could control them by what they were able to buy and sell. There is really not that far of a leap between the chip for the company store and the American dollar at this point, the way it is structured. Okay.
Well, I will tell you, anybody, if I ever hear anybody pushing back against you saying that, I will be standing right behind you with a big stick of knowledge to beat them to death. Because you are absolutely correct.
Well, I appreciate that, Roger. Now, listen, I've also added Terry Joyce into the discussion.
One of my favorite people on the planet.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you guys? You're one of my favorite people on the planet too, Roger.
Well, Chuck is also one of my favorite people on the planet because he tolerates me every week.
Chuck too.
I don't tolerate you, Roger. I learn from you, sir. And I appreciate the eloquence with which you say what you have to say, and you find very often that you and I are in absolute agreement with each other.
Yes,
even though our language is different, and none of this is rehearsed, by the way, people. All of you who are listening to this right now, I want you to understand something. I don't bring Roger on and discuss his agenda. I don't turn around and pre-interview him any of these times that he's been on the show. It's just pretty much been, okay, Roger, say what you have to say, and we just interact organically.
Chuck and I don't even talk unless it's on this show. Rarely do we even have a conversation. There is no way in hell we could stage this show. We couldn't.
There's no conspiracy here. There's no conspiracy to be on the same page. It just so happens that we both go in it from two different directions and end up in exactly the same space. And It's remarkable to me. It really is. I don't know if you caught the earlier part of the show there, Terry. I was having a little trouble getting Roger on, but we wound up into one of our great discussions as always. And I think we're also going to have Leslie Carabolta join us in a little bit.
Oh, very nice. Another favorite person of mine. And you seem to always bring some of the best talent from the Liberty Beacon Project onto your show. And for that, we're greatly indebted to you, Charles.
Well, you're not indebted to me at this point. You're indebted to Terry because she's been the one who's helped me to find exactly who I need to find.
I give her so many compliments. I want her head to fit through the door, so I have to limit them, you know.
But go ahead, Terry.
Well, there's more to come too. We have like 12 different radio show hosts now with the Liberty Beacon.
Actually, 14.
14. Oh my God, we got 2 more.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, and it'll grow. I'm pretty sure we're probably going to end up with many, many more.
Yes. And Terry is the individual who has the reins on that entire endeavor. And I couldn't have found a better suited person and one with a better personality than Terry.
Oh, well, thank you, Roger. I'm happy to be a part of the Liberty Beacon. I really, believe what we're doing and the message and the information that we're getting out. So anything that I can do to be of help, I'm there 100%.
Oh, well, Chuck, it's a good thing she said that because I've got about a half a dozen articles, 3 conference calls, and 2 radio shows I'd like you to do this afternoon. She did say anything, right? Didn't she say anything?
She did.
I'm kidding, obviously. That's my day, not yours, my friend. You've got enough you're involved in, Terry. You go in a lot of different directions on your own. You really, really do.
Yeah, this is true. I'm a bit wiped. See, listen to me. I'm a bit wiped out today because I've been moving. I also did a show in Monterey, California, and now I'm in Fresno visiting family. So after I do this interview, I'm going to go hang out with Mom for a little while too.
Well, Chuck, let me say goodbye because I would like you to have some uninterrupted time with Leslie. I mean, with Terry and Leslie both. And if I stay on the show, I tend to try to monopolize the conversation, and I don't do it intentionally, but that's just the way I am. So thank you very much for having the patience to wait until my internet stabilized and bring me into the show. And Terry, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And guys, please say hello to Leslie for me.
Yes, I'm communicating with her right now on Skype. She's on standby. So.
Absolutely, Roger, and I thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and we'll just work through the internet problems. It is what it is with the electronic age, right?
Yes, it is, and I will talk to you definitely next Tuesday.
Absolutely, sir. I'm looking forward to it as always.
All right.
Roger Landry, and you can find that article we were discussing earlier on the Liberty Beacon, all one word, thelibertybeacon.com, and it's the dumbing down of America. And if you want to see it visually, there's a picture of the iconic sort of thinking man statue there, except he's holding his head in disgust, it looks like to me, and I thought that was apropos, certainly. So, thank you, Roger, and as always, sir, keep fighting the good fight. I am definitely on your side.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Roger.
So, Terry.
Yes.
Of course, we are on the air as always live, and things are always interesting when it's live, and we had a little problem trying to get Roger in. We're going to bring on Leslie in a moment, who was on last week. But we're going to discuss a little bit of a different subject, and we're going to let go of some of the political issues for a moment, but I guarantee you some way or another we're going to wind up getting back to them.
Absolutely. I'm sure
because,
we will.
Of course, in the news and spread throughout mainstream and alternative media right now is the death of Robin Williams. And you as a stand-up comedian?
Yes. It's very shocking. Yes.
See, now, the thing to me is that I don't find it terribly shocking. I find it terribly sad, though, because I feel as though the man still had a great deal more to give, and maybe that's sort of a greedy, selfish way of looking at it, but I do believe that he had a great more to give us. Far beyond the pre-production of Mrs. Doubtfire 2, I think there was a great deal more that he had to say, and I want to retrace a few things about his career, because to be honest with you, from the time I was a child, again, just like I say to John Barber, because when he does my show, he was the creator of Real People, and also was involved in a lot of other things throughout the years. There, actually, even did an episode of Breaking Bad not too long ago. Just put out a recent book where he has a lot of very interesting things to say, and you guys heard that show on Saturday. But again, another guy who has always been part of sort of my stream of consciousness was Robin Williams, and I was first introduced to him, obviously through now I know I'm dating myself here a bit, but when I was a small kid, I was watching, Mork and Mindy, and I had seen his appearance on Happy Days, and all of that kind of good stuff. And I was introduced to him as a character actor in that way, and of course, it didn't take too long from there where I started seeing him in short clips, short films from places like the Improv and various other venues where stand-up comedians. I know that the landscape of where a stand-up comedian performs and works out their material is different nowadays, but at that time there were a great many of these small clubs, and although they're still out there, it's not quite the same as it was, huh, Terry?
Well, they're still out there. There was a time, and especially like the time when Robin Williams was coming up, where there was a huge comedy boom. And as a matter of fact, I remember seeing an article in the Wall Street Journal about how comedy clubs were a large an investment. But right around the beginning of the early 90s, it did start to crash. There were still, and there still are a lot of comedy clubs across the country, and there's still venues to work in, but that time where the fat of the cow, or however you want to say it, it went away. It actually went away when I began to enter into working professionally, and there were a lot of people that left the business at that point. They did not continue on into the next level. So yeah. But it's still there. There's still clubs. There's still the road. Comedians are still doing the same thing. They're still, going to the major clubs and waiting, getting on the list to do open mic night, or getting to hopefully to be seen by, the people who own the clubs. Like, I don't know, Bud Friedman is still alive. Mitzi Shore is still alive. I don't think that they're as hands-on in particularly picking talent down in Los Angeles. Some of the players have changed, but it's still quite a thriving art form that's out there. And there's I'm friends with several comedians. I mean, I would say probably even on my online media, Facebook. I mean, there's at least a third or more of the people that I'm friends with are comedians, or people who know comedians, or fans of comedians. And so it's been quite a tragic time for many people, and they're passing a lot of information around online. One of the things that you mentioned, it's not a surprise, and that he committed suicide. And I wonder, the one thing I'm kind of concerned about is that there's always, and again, we make generalizations or stereotypes that, comedians do kill themselves, or they're so depressed that they kill themselves, and they're the sad clown. I don't necessarily
Hello.
feel that way. Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
I don't necessarily always feel that way. I mean, there are a lot of entertainers that are out there. There's a lot of comedians that are out there, and yes, perhaps we have certain vulnerabilities and issues and things that cause us to be funny, but by and large, they're just, there's it's more shocking for a comic, I think, to take their life, because they make people laugh, and, someone like Robin Williams brought a lot of hope and inspiration and a lot of healing to a lot of people, and so when they take their own life, then you're like, why? You kind of dimmed a little bit of our hope right now.
Well, Terry, let me just say this real quick. I didn't make that comment because... I didn't make that comment because the fact that Robin was a comic. The realism to me is that there is let me see how I can put this in a really succinct fashion. There is a creative element, whether you're a musician, an actor, a comic, whatever. There is two sorts of individuals that do this kind of thing, in my opinion. Some people are talented based on their work. They're just talented, that's it. But there is a darker side to certain things, and some people do channel sort of a darker energy in order to get to whatever it is they're creating. There's like a darker sort of side to creativity. And
Yes.
some of the best, most prolific, and most profound comedians I've ever seen, and believe me, I've actually spent a lot of time observing comedians. But even comedians, musicians, it didn't matter. Most of these guys and women that had been the most soulful in one way or another, that have been the most profound in one way or another, that have really spoken to me over the years, are people that do suffer from some sort of pain. And they express their pain, or they exercise their pain through their craft in a lot of cases, right? So this is what I saw with Robin, is that he was a guy who was rather overwhelmed by his intellect. And he was extremely talented, multifaceted even. You could see that, even looking back at something like, Moscow on the Hudson, which nobody ever brings up. But it was an interesting film to me. I know it's not exactly one of the critical best things ever out there of his, but I mean, if you look at the multidimensional fashion with which he was handling things there, this wasn't the campy sort of Mork from Ork guy. This wasn't the legendarily drug-fueled sort of rantings that he had gone through and sort of honed in one way or another into a coalescence of rather interesting but very fast-paced intellectual humor.
Well, he was, Rob was
to
an actor too, as well, and he was trained at Juilliard, so he had different, he wasn't just, like, let's say somebody who just does stand-up. He transcended into, winning an Academy Award, so he could play dramatic parts as well. It's just, I know that, granted, I know that, comedians oftentimes work from a painful place, or they've had painful childhoods, or, they might, some of them, have, drug addictions and certain negativity in their life. I'm just concerned about that, that there's this thought of that creativity has to come from pain, or has to come, that if you're not, you know what I mean? I just think that, I just don't want to look at this as one way. It's just like saying that there's maybe there's a predisposition on some level, but being that I'm one myself, and that I've lived most of my life doing it, and being around it, and I've been in that, I am in that community, and I do know people. I just find that's the one thing that I think I don't know if I really believe that yes, people create from dark places, but so do other people create from dark places, not just comedians.
Oh yeah, but that was my point. I'm just saying that I'm not saying that that's the only place that creativity comes from, but it is certainly a viable source. When you have an excess of pain, or you have an excess of feeling sort of displaced or out of place, among the society at large, or among your community at large, this is always a fertile place where creativity can be cultivated. And it just seemed to me that a guy who was thinking that fast, who was so multi-talented, because it doesn't matter the training, if you don't have it in your guts, you don't have it in your guts. It's that simple. He had a lot.
But I just don't. My feeling is, and again, I'm just really careful about that whole sad clown thing, because I think that a lot of people, they think that they project that onto what reality is. Like, other comedians will go, oh, well, I have to be sad in order to be creative, and I don't. My feeling is the healthier that I've gotten in my own life, the things that I've released from my own life, the more creative I've become. I find the opposite. The release of things, or it's that the whole, because sometimes I feel that when that happens, then we get this sort of nostalgia over the sad person. Maybe I don't know. I mean, I just have to say that. I mean, I just because of the fact that comedians are just like any other sect of life where people commit suicide. Of course, there's going to be a percentage of people that are going to commit suicide that are comedians, just like in the rest of society. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have people who are bankers that are jumping out of windows right now. You know, I mean, they're committing suicide too as well. So I'm wondering if it's something that's even symptomatic of what's happening in the world right now, and that maybe what's going on around us, people are also losing hope, whether you're a comedian or just a person who works for Wells Fargo.
Hey, can I jump in on this conversation at any time?
Please do, Leslie. Please do.
I'm listening. I certainly was distressed to hear about Robin Williams last night. The last 7 years of my life has been spent as a family client advocate in addiction recovery, learning about neuroscience, how so many toxins and chemicals crossing the blood-brain barrier affect the health of our brain. I think one of the most, and I have information to share with all of you and of course our listeners, but I think that one of the most profound things that I've learned, because we all think of addicts and go, oh, ooh, yikes, digging down deep, people with major problems. And when I started working in addiction recovery, I saw time and again that most of the people there were the most creative and brilliant and spiritual people that I had ever met. And there were certainly conversations going on until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning that would just blow most people's minds. Along that vein, I think someone like Robin Williams, who has had so much brilliance, insight, his psyche was so finely tuned, and I think that was showed in how many roles that he played, that it's very hard to balance that highly sensitive person, if you will, with the reality that we live in. Mm-hmm. And for some people, it just becomes too hard. And we know that the reality that is evolving before us is probably one of the ugliest in history. We are on such a path to destruction. It's like a train gaining speed, and if we don't get on that train, if we don't try and stop that train, we're all going to be depressed. In fact, the CDC data is showing that an estimated 1 in 10 U.S. adults report depression. Again, going back to what I learned through neuroscience, and it's backed up in a book that was written by Julie Holland, Dr. Julie Holland, called Weekends at Bellevue, 9 years on the night shift at the psych ER, is that we fall into the hellhole, the rabbit hole, the hellhole of our brain. It's almost like Alice in Wonderland. You know, we all love that fantasy story, but she was falling into her brain and all of the magnificent things that were going on. She was falling into her rabbit hole. I mean, even Alice through the looking glass was looking at herself on the other side. Is that people fall into that hellhole and they don't know how to get out. They no longer see the light. They start becoming disconnected. And that's a very frightening place to be. And no matter what anyone, loving family, friends, status, money, no matter what's on the table, that dark hole takes precedence. And it is a scary place to be. And I think anyone who is battling depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, certainly understands what I am talking about. This Dr. Julie Holland, who I happened to catch in an interview on NPR many years ago, mentioned that when people have a pathological illness, say like diabetes or cancer or something along that vein, there's usually an endpoint. We're getting good at stretching that input, endpoint. We're getting good at going into remission. We're getting good with learning about alternative therapies, which I'll address later on in the show. But generally, there's an endpoint. We haven't gotten that good yet, people, but we're getting better.
Right. And,
then she makes the distinction that when someone has a mental illness, there is no endpoint. In fact, she says that the brain is like a vortex that goes in and inward and inward and inward. There is no endpoint. It's like the black hole in the universe. And usually how a person with mental illness dies is from a pathological illness or an accident and suicide.
And these are all extremely valid points, especially in light of, the recent, well, not recent, but really the struggle over the years he had with substances and things like this that are, public knowledge. I just wanted the ladies to know I've added in David Lewis Crumpton, who's an author. Yeah, you with me, sir?
Yeah, I'm here, Chuck. Hey, it's nice to talk to you again.
Nice to talk to you. Daniel, actually, not David. I'm trying to read 3 different things, and somebody else who was messaging me is named David, so sorry about that, sir.
That's okay, no problem. I just wanted to add a few things in. For one thing, Robin Williams' death was, not too good for me either, because I grew up with him, and he has touched me in several of. I love it when comedians can transmigrate that barrier and do more dramatic things like What Dreams May Come, which I find very ironic that he was in that. Given the circumstances.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I did want to say something about addiction and the psychology of addiction because it is something that has affected my life very, very deeply. As a writer, I was an actor as a younger kid, so being an actor and a writer is kind of the same thing because when you have that many voices in your head, especially when you're writing, I'll tend to take on the characteristics of the character in my everyday life in order to channel that voice. And when you do that so many times, or you do that, with acting, writing, with anything where you have to change your personality, after a while you start to feel lonely because you ask yourself, who am I really? I've adopted all of these little quirks and perks and characteristics from so many people in my head and they've become a part of me, but really deep down, who am I? And that can be a lonely place because if you don't even know who you are, it's hard for you to be able to let other people in, So I think that's one of the contributing factors to why this happened to Robin Williams is, it was obvious he was such an eclectic actor, was so very talented. There was probably a lot going on up in there. And, it's a tragedy, and I hate it, but I wish more people would educate themselves about addiction and how it affects the human. You were talking about human brain chemistry. And me personally, I have struggled with addiction in the past and as a writer. And one of the reasons that artists do it is to escape, to shut the voices down. You got so many voices in there. At some point, you just want to scream because it's like, how many people are in there? I just want to be alone for 15 minutes, which is ironic. So most people use alcohol or drugs to just blink out, to shut it all off, basically to close the curtain on the stage. I know that in my own personal journey, and this is something that I would really want all of your listeners to do, we talk about freedom and liberty and spirituality and stuff like that at zenonthecar.com, and it's all interconnected, but a lot of people that I know in the liberty movement are wanting to fight the bondage of the state, but in their own personal lives, they're struggling with the bondage of addiction or alcoholism. And I would like to reiterate to everybody out there that you're not going to be effective in one fight against bondage unless you get the other one correct too. You have to deal with it in your own life and understand that a lot of these things that are being put out on the streets, drugs, alcohol, are there to make us destroy ourselves. And it's an easy out. But for me, one of the life-changing things that happened to me is when I got to a point to where I said, this has to stop. You have to break the cycle of addiction. It's destroying your family. It's destroying your health. It's destroying everything that you know. The universe provided a book, 2 books actually. One is called Depression Free Naturally, and the other one is 7 Weeks to Sobriety by Dr. Joanne Lawson. Anybody familiar with her?
No.
if you guys could, when you get off the show, get on YouTube and look up Dr. Joanne Lawson. Back in the 70s, and I'll try to be brief, but this is very important information I want people to know about. Back in the 70s, her husband died when they were very young, and her son went into a very deep, deep depression. Usually when somebody experiences a traumatic event, it offsets brain chemistry. It gets out of whack. She tried everything with her son's alcoholism, AA, rehab, all of it, and he continuously would go back into relapse. The last time that she tried, he did, I think it was a 90-day thing where he was dry. He came home, everything seemed well, and she got home from work one day, and he had committed suicide. So she told herself that how modern medicine is dealing with addiction, there's something very, very barbaric and wrong with it, because their success rate is so low. I mean, most people who are into modern rehabilitation, they continuously relapse for the rest of their life. So she put herself through medical school, started studying brain chemistry. What she discovered was that people who are addicted to alcohol, that was for primary passion first, and then she studied other addictions. What happens when a person is an alcoholic is it depletes oxygen from the brain on vitamin C. Oxygen in the brain is what produces, good emotions, happy emotions, positivity. So you get stuck in this cycle where maybe you have a bad day, you get a drink, it depletes oxygen and vitamin C in the brain, and then you get more depressed the next day, so you go have another drink, and now you're in this cycle. So what she started to do after she got her degree was she would take the hardest alcoholic cases that she could, and she would put them on extremely high doses of vitamin C intravenously. Because you can't overdose on vitamin C. Whatever the body can't use, it'll just eliminate anyway. After doing this, what she discovered was that it produced a high amount of oxygen. The person was happy, could not make themselves get sad, and didn't want to drink. And she has a 99.99% success rate with completely curing alcoholism. After her results, came out, she started to look at other addictions and found. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. After her
I added a caller in there, Daniel. Sorry, I was just bringing him in. Go ahead.
But after she did her studies with alcoholism, she did it with other drugs too, and found that it was the same. That to rebalance the human brain, to get it out of the cycle, you need proper vitamins and minerals. And so I would highly recommend anybody who's struggling with addiction, please pick up 7 Weeks to Sobriety with Dr. Joanne Lawson. She gives you a vitamin supplementation regimen, which is extremely effective. I mean, I could personally tell you, with the combinations of supplements such as vitamin C, fish oil, there's a supplement called L-tryptophan and a supplement called DMAE, which is absolutely, it's a miracle. It helps to equalize the left and right hemisphere so that a person who's in an addictive cycle isn't continuously, bouncing back and forth like they have bipolar. But I would highly recommend everybody to pick that book up, especially if you or someone is struggling with addiction.
They got a feel for everything, don't they?
No, actually, no. That's not quite where this author is going. And I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, sir.
Daniel Lewis Crumpton.
Daniel, hi, I'm Leslie. Leslie Bose of Holy Hormones, honey. And I am so glad that you brought this up because that's where I wanted to go next. Depression, alcoholism, addiction is the brain's is the emotion being expressed by the brain not getting the nutrients that it needs to function. The emotion is depression. The action is looking for something to satiate it. And that was another surprising thing when I got down to the Addiction Recovery Ranch, where it also uses a neuronutrient protocol that similar to what this doctor, I'm sure, is that you were talking about in her work and in her research. And two of the most amazing things happened. One is the withdrawal from the drug was a lot less severe because the body was getting nutrients immediately that are bioavailable and that are being absorbed. And the second thing is that when the brain gets the nutrients that it's craving, honestly craving, what it's lacking, it will stop craving for anything to make it feel good. And those two things are profound. And with the advent of neuroscience and neuroimaging and and scanning, brain scans, we can actually see the brain heal itself with the right care and feeding. The brain has the ability to heal itself. It is the motherboard. And to see addicts walk out of this program after 30, 60, 90 days, a lot of them having lost everything, a lot of them having been in jail, a lot of them having been on the streets because the addiction is a disease of the brain that just gets worse and worse if left untreated, just like mental illness is a disease of the brain which gets worse. And to see them walk out of that program healthier than most people on the street just blew my mind.
Well, like I said before, I added in a caller, so I just wanted to give him a chance to speak. 715, you're on the air.
Well, I know this for sure. I like to have a drink now and then, and one time I attended an AA meeting. The first thing they told me was don't hang around other drinkers. So I had to get up and leave.
Well, but here's the deal. You know, in AA, you identify yourself as an alcoholic or a drug addict. That's NA, number one. And two, those people, and my hats go off to them, because they are using their personal will to fight the disease, which is why there's such a low success rate, but which is also another reason why a lot of people in NA transfer addictions. From alcohol to cigarettes or coffee or, foods, whatever. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, everybody's really quick to, call it a disease and give you a pill to take care of it. And, I mean, you're driving down the road, hypothetically speaking, of course, here, and there's this, human being, let's put it, not a female, not a male, and, they got an obvious weight problem, but, while you're sitting at your red light, you look over and they're sucking down their 2 Big Macs or large order fries and their strawberry shake. That's not an illness. That's a problem. That's a self-induced decision-making process. Me, I don't have a weight problem, but and because I don't do things like that, first off. It just seems like every time you listen to Dr. Phil and you listen to all these people, it's an illness. You fell down the steps 3 times. It's an illness. Everything's an illness. Nothing's your fault.
Well, okay, but you know what?
Yeah, but here's the deal.
Well, let me just say this really quickly, Leslie. It's really very similar, because here's the deal. Most people that are, overweight, that are still consuming the garbage food, are in the very same position that a drug addict is in or that an alcoholic is in, because their bodies are still starved for the proper nutrients. They're eating something, but they're not getting what their brains and what their chemistry requires for them to be balanced human beings. They're getting...
But it's not their fault.
Well, I'm not saying that it's not their fault necessarily. They have the ability to take control of their lives and to stop consuming it, just like someone has the ability to stop consuming alcohol or stop consuming drugs if they make certain choices. But it is still a problem, because the root problem is not being taken care of here. They're not being given the proper nutrients. They're not being educated about what they're doing to themselves. So really, it is an unwitting sort of thing that's going on. I'm not saying that it's not your fault.
Well, I get all that. Let's say I'm a 48-year-old male. I got a wife, 2 kids. I'm on my 3rd house. We've been upgrading. I didn't graduate. I have usually I got a policy in life. I don't trust a man that don't drink, because a man that don't drink don't trust himself not to do it when he shouldn't.
Okay.
and about once a week, every 2 weeks, I'll come out to my shop and I like bourbon, and I'll have a few bourbons, and maybe a few more if the night's going well and I'm working on something. Why don't I have any of these problems?
Now, that's a good question. Mm-hmm. That is the question that we don't know the answer to, but let me kind of address that question, all right?
I've never been in drugs.
And the thing is, let's go back to what you're saying about nobody's being held accountable. We have to get away from the fact that we are ego. That's passe. We're not ego. Science is showing us we are biochemical in nature. What affects one person is going to affect another person differently, and the same goes for prescription drugs and anything else, vaccines, prescription drugs, psychotropic drugs, pornography, there's another one for you, food, there's another one for you. Anything we ingest into our body is going to react differently. That's how the pharmaceutical industry has gotten away with their Russian roulette game for so long.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, my ex-wife used to work for Miles Laboratories. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Out of Mishawaka, Indiana. Then you probably know what kind of stuff they make there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the testing they do underground in the laboratories. That's my ex-wife, mind you. I think as far as science and medications, they've come a long way. I think one of the greatest breakthroughs was penicillin. I think one of the greatest things they ever did was control it, even though it doesn't give you an effect, but it can cure, can help you out a lot, toothaches. In fact, so I think all it's just getting so popular. I mean, you see it, you watch TV, you see it here, you see it there, you see it on bill, hey, you're fat, Rachel trim, and there's a pill for everything, and it's one size fits all.
But
exactly.
And there is not a single person on this broadcast right now, I guarantee you, and I don't like to speak for anybody, but I guarantee you there's not a single person on this broadcast that doesn't see the damage that the pharmaceutical, medical industrial complex has done. There is no way that we may have slightly differing, opinions as to how it should be dealt with, but the damage that has been done by that industry is just immeasurable.
Oh, it is. You watch TV. You got, if you had a hip implant or this bone growth thing, it just doesn't end. I mean, there's lawyers out there. That's all they do is sue pharmaceutical companies. But this alcohol and drugs and all that. I think I don't think it's an illness. I think it's a self-induced thing. Have you guys ever watched cops on TV? Everybody has, right? Raise your hands. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've never seen them arrest an overly motivated crackhead. Not one time.
Well, let me say something as a recovering addict. I don't believe anybody is born with the disease of alcoholism. I just don't believe that. However, or addiction, I believe that you make yourself that way through habitual altering of brain chemistry. With the amount.
Well, I would disagree. I think a mother that's doing crack or something like that while she's pregnant, I think that baby's going to come out wanting that, or not knowing what it wants, but something. I've never done crack. So, but I've known people and seen people that have meth. I used to live in Arkansas.
Well, the
host of my life.
Hold on. The host of this show, which is me, I'm going to identify myself right now and explain something to you. I was born with an addiction because of my mother's use of drugs while I was in the womb. I have never in my life utilized a needle to shoot up heroin. Okay, I have never had a desire for it. You're not correct here. Okay, about that. When it comes to
about a parent inducing something on their unborn child.
Oh no, it does damage. But what I'm telling you is that it doesn't translate into a desire later on in life to be a drug addict.
No, because if you're not even taking... and you survive, the hospital will wean you off it. I mean, just like they do they throw a druggie in jail or whatever, and they're really, sweating and, DTing really bad, they'll give them something similar to what they were taking, not the exact thing to bring them down slowly.
Well, in the 1970s, they didn't have that kind of treatment for babies, so they basically just stuck me in a box and told my father I wouldn't survive. Okay.
Well, I'm 48 years old, so back when my mom smoked, and she had 18 kids and smoked with all of them. All of us are alive but one, and I got a brother, I think he's 69. So I don't know, there is something to that. I think a lot of it is just the society we live in. Everything, like I said, everything's an excuse, and there's a reason for everything. It's not nobody's fault. You're okay. It's not, you can't help that. That's wrong with you. You didn't have, that's a bunch of crap.
Well, caller, let me say this. Speaking as somebody who's recovered from an addiction, once you're not born with it, I don't believe that, but when you do alter your brain chemistry, there's you have the frontal lobe of the brain and you have the temporal lobe. And what people need to understand about addiction is that in the frontal lobe, you have conscience, okay? This is when you feel sorry, because of your actions. But in the temporal lobe, those are survival. Most of your animals operate on the temporal lobe. It's just survival. There is no conscience there. You cannot rationalize there. It's just food, sex, shelter. All right? Now, what happens
in that order, but okay,
not in that order. Now, what happens?
Everybody has their own order.
What happens when you habitually use a substance is you rewire the temporal lobe to put the substance of choice in the hierarchy of survival. So for somebody who habitually uses,
I understand what you're doing, but I'm talking about how everything's nobody's fault. Now I'm 48 years old. Back in the 80s, the Grateful Dead came to town, and in probably a week, maybe a 2-week span, I did 3 hits of acid. And on that third hit, I got you're up for 14 hours laughing your ass off and your jaw hurts. And I come to the conclusion that is way too much fun to be good for you. So I never did it again. I did it 3 times, and I don't know if you've ever done acid. This is 25 years ago, and I just came to the conclusion that that's going to end up nowhere, and that was it. I was done with it. The reason I've never tried crack is because it's really addicting. It'll grab you and hold on to you. So everybody's got that choice. You make your own choices.
Well, I beg to differ with you on that. And in fact, some of the choices that we make, let me backtrack. What we need to include also in here are heavy metal levels in our body. Mercury has been linked to addiction. So it may not be something that we're born with, but certainly environment, including vaccinations, including living in a hot spot. There are 256, I think, mercury hotspots in the United States. Being exposed to mercury, certainly in light bulbs now, and in so many different areas of our life. We don't know when the body's tipping point is going to be reached and what that looks like.
And I'm sure, Leslie, that the increased levels of the heavy metals in those areas correlate very, very well to larger populations of so-called addicted people. It actually lines up very nicely, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, addiction is everywhere. I mean, it's in Alaska, it's in Texas, it's in New York, it's.
Our kids are highly addicted. Heroin is an epidemic because it's so cheap, and the brain doesn't stop forming until about age 25. And these kids are dipping into heroin in their teens, and it's a frightening epidemic that's going to keep increasing because we're not getting the nutrients that we need from our food sources, or even if we're eating organically from the soils any longer.
You know what, back when I was a kid and I did something wrong, I got my ass beat. Now, if you beat your kid's ass, they call the cops, you go to jail. I got a 21-year-old, graduated high school back when he was 18, got a job, and he's been there ever since. He's now the boss, makes more money than I do per hour, lives at home, of course, and pays very little rent. I know he ain't listening to this, but but I mean, and we were real strict and real fair. And there's times we were going down the highway and he started crying in the back seat for no reason. I figured if you're going to cry, I'm going to give you a reason. I pull the car over, give him a couple swats. Okay, go ahead and cry. I can tolerate listening to it now. There's not enough of that. That's why I think kids are doing what kids are doing, because they can get away with everything.
Well, that's another whole discussion. That's really appropriate.
Well, no, it's the heavy metal thing. There's an explanation for everything, and everybody, if you look for something to be wrong, or you're looking for an answer somewhere to fit your needs, you're going to find it. I mean, everything you're talking about, I've been listening to your show. It's a choice.
I appreciate it, and look, I appreciate your views. I got to tell you that. I kind of disagree with some of what you're saying here, but
and that's the real thing is everybody's got an opinion, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Can I say something?
Mine.
Terry wants to jump in here, and then I think I'm gonna let you go because it's hard for me to keep so many callers on. I got a couple other ones trying to get in. So
you should be happy to have as many callers.
I appreciate it. I do. I just don't want to drop. I don't want to screw up the sound of the broadcast, because if I add too many, it'll start breaking up.
Oh, okay, I hear you.
But listen, I really do appreciate you calling in. And look, man, thanks for listening. And again, I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye-bye. Terry, you were trying to jump in there? I'm sorry. Terry?
Well, one of the questions I like to interject is that there are some people that, experiment with drugs. They might do a little bit here and there. Yeah? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yep, I got you.
Oh, I must not be connected now.
No, we're hearing you,
Okay.
Terry.
Well, I'm in a hotel room, so my okay, great. I'm not sure because my internet. I'm not sure how good the internet is here. I'm in a hotel room, so it was kind of going in and out. There are some people though that may experiment with drugs here and there, or can have a couple glasses of wine or drink, and not be addicted. They don't seem to have the predisposition as some other people might. And I realize that there's also probably like the chemical influence. If you continue doing something, you can rewire your brain. But it's that's how I understand it. Not everybody that tries a drug is actually going to end up being addicted to it.
That's right. And what I was trying to explain to the caller is when a person, and all of our biochemistry is a little bit different given our genetics. So one person may be predisposed to quicker rewiring than another person. But what the caller needs to understand is that when you do rewire, that part of your brain where you put the substance in the highest order of survival, it's almost literally like you hear a voice. You'll be, going about your day, and a voice will be like, you need to go get that substance. And then I'll
tell you something, Daniel. I'm very glad that the caller doesn't understand that necessarily, because you know what? It is a very ugly and destructive thing when you get one of those voices in you that is doing you harm.
Right, and when you tell it no, it gets louder and louder and louder. Mm-hmm. And what I tried to explain to people when I was recovering was, people tell you to fight addiction. They say you have to fight this, you have to fight it. Well, the truth is that's incorrect. You got to think of the prefrontal lobe as Bruce Banner and the temporal lobe as the Incredible Hulk. The more that you fight that addiction, your brain believes that you have to have that substance for survival. That's like trying to tell yourself, I'm never going to eat anymore. Exactly. Your brain's going to fight that. You can't fight the Hulk. You only make him stronger. You have to accept it. You have to accept that this is a problem. You have to find, inner peace for one. And you have to get your brain chemistry back on track. But the caller needs to understand that, sure, he may be able to have a few bourbons or whatever. That just means that his biochemistry is different from an addict. And at some point, now I believe that it is an addict's choice and responsibility when they first begin to acclimate to the substance. When before it gets too bad, they do have a responsibility. But I'm telling you, once you get into that quicksand, it is very difficult. Very, very difficult to get out.
And that's the same with depression. And there is so much that we don't understand about the brain, but I can tell you there is so much that we are learning about the brain. And Bonnie Kaplan, who is a PhD up in Canada, was on one of my radio shows talking about these nutritional supplements. Mm-hmm. Now that there are 25 independent published studies on for ADHD, depression, anxiety, autism, and many, many more, is that she said that we need to consider nutrition to be the primary treatment and medication the supplement. And we've got it all backwards. We get depressed, especially as women, and as women, we get depressed once a month. You can count on it. Every husband out there listening is going to say, oh yeah, got that one. And we go running off to the doctor, and I call it the take 2 Valium and go home honey syndrome. For women, there's another piece involved because we don't understand how our hormones affect our behaviors. Most women are hormonally imbalanced, as men these days. But when women hit a certain time of their menstrual cycle, they fall off a 40-foot cliff onto jagged rocks below, and that's what hormone imbalance is. That's what leads to addiction and depression and self-destructive behaviors, more attempted suicides at that time. You can throw postpartum depression into that, now known as postpartum psychosis, and now labeled as maternal mental illness. Into that mix. And what it simply is that every pregnancy that a woman goes through, her body takes every essential nutrient every vitamin, mineral, amino acid, enzyme to create a perfect baby. And she's left with what's left over. Most women going into pregnancy do not even have enough nutrition to sustain themselves, let alone bring a child into the world, and they don't realize that connection. And then you've got the pharmaceutical companies standing on the other side offering Prozac and Xanax to help these women be better mommies. That's opening the door for being an addict, because the brain doesn't have the nutrients anymore because it just gave everything it had to that baby, and you're putting it on a psychotropic medication, and it's going to reach a certain level, right? And then it's going to crave more. It's like,
I gotta tell you something, because just to go back to the Robin Williams discussion really quickly, the sickening dropping feeling in my stomach when I heard the news after understanding that he had gone through a rehab program and all that, was that, is it possible that they may have put him on some medication that might have led to this too?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that.
I don't know for sure. I'm not saying that I know anything about this, but, when you come out of a lot of these programs as they exist now, there is an allopathic solution, which generally involves, pharmaceuticals. They do immediately push a lot of the Prozac type stuff, if not Prozac itself. Yes. And this just absolutely creates chaos because, again, like Leslie pointed out, and I know others have pointed out so far, everybody's chemistry is different. You introduce this roulette, and I'm pretty sure that Leslie was the one who said that it was like a Russian roulette with the pharmaceuticals, into the endocrine system, which is unbalanced for one reason or another. And here you go. And even if he had gone through all of that, I was immediately faced with that sickening idea in my mind that he may have very much been a victim of that kind of thing. So I don't know what you guys think about.
I agree. And a study came out of Harvard last year, and it was also featured on a CBS 60 Minutes news program, where the psychologist and associate director of the program and placebo studies found that the majority of antidepressant trials showed little to no proof of efficacy, and those results were simply hidden from view. And so now we've got 1 in 10 who are depressed, 1 in 10 on antidepressants, children on antidepressants, and actually in many, many cases it can increase suicidal tendencies, cravings, addictions. Why? Because it's like deepening the hellhole in the brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank God that was a route that I never took. And I want to say this, and then we're going to bounce Chuck and Leslie and Terry. What I realized, I had an addiction of painkillers for over 10 years, and tried everything in the book to. This is something I talk about openly because if it helps another person, then it was worth the experience. Tried everything. It's a wonder I'm not dead. Tried everything that I possibly could think of to recover, and whenever I read that book by Dr. Joanne Lawson, especially start taking DMAE with high doses of vitamin C. It really, within 3 days, there were no withdrawal symptoms completely. After a 10-year addiction, the thought never even popped in my head after my body got re-regulated. But there's something that I realized, and if anybody who's out there is struggling with an addiction, I want you to realize this too. Addiction is a double-edged sword, because every addict will tell you that when they have something, that they have their substance of choice very clear in their mind, and they have high emotion attached to it. It does not matter the circumstances. They could be in a ditch or under a bridge with no money. Their mind will find a way to get that substance. It works every single time. An addict's mind has the capability to produce that substance when there are no resources. And when I realized that the human brain was that powerful, I said, wait a second. If it can work in the negative, it can work in the positive.
Right.
And that's when I realized that the addictive brain can be a very, 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 very powerful gift. That if you can think about your passion or somebody that you love or what you want to do with your life with the same intensity, the same clarity, and the same emotion that you think about your substance, you will manifest it. You'll have no choice but to bring that into your life. So I would ask you to keep that in mind whenever you discuss addiction with your clients, Leslie, and let them know that. Let them know it doesn't necessarily have to be a curse. That if you learn how to use that bad boy, it can be a blessing.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. And thank you for bringing that up. Everything is a blessing, and we have to get out of the negative mindset and self-destructing. I mean, we're only just a replica of our planet that's self-destructing due to our will, and the fighting and the infighting and the wars and the fighting and the infighting that goes on in our body. We need to heal everything, absolutely. And the very, very first step is to ditch the medications, to get on a nutritional supplemental program that is bioavailable, that feeds minerals to the brain. It's the minerals that light up the electromagnetic frequencies in the brain, that makes the brain come alive, that satiates its appetite, that satiates its cravings. And once the neuroendocrine immune system, which is the body's three major systems, the NEI supersystem, is intact, then the rest of the systems in the body start falling into place. Then the hormones, the chemical messages going out to every cell in the body are intact so that the body can function. And this can only happen if the brain is functioning. The brain is the motherboard, and when the motherboard ain't happy, nobody's happy.
My father used to say, "Son, when the mind is weak, the body will suffer." And I would always respond, when the body is weak, the mind will suffer. They're interconnected.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's good. Powerful.
Yeah, that was my dad.
Yep. Very powerful.
I told you when we discussed him on the interview with you that your dad sounded like a very smart guy.
My dad he is an absolute titan, and one day they're going to build a statue in his honor. I just know it because the man was my hero.
Nice.
Awesome.
Very nice.
So
we've lost another great actor this year. This show, I wanted to come on this show, Charles, and everybody, and just so that we can wake up the world. And we don't have to be suffering at all. Let's get on the path of giving our bodies the nutrients that it needs. Go to truehope.com, go to qsciences.com. There are other products out there that are targeting the brain. And if you start looking and researching into these types of products and you start incorporating them into your daily lives, you will see a magnificent change. No more fatigue, no more lethargy, no more craving, no more depression, no more anxiety. But again, this takes time. Psychotropic drugs just mask the problem. Healing takes time. But it can be done, and you will get your life back, your relationship back, your work back, everything that you wanted and more, and you'll be able to start thinking clearly and attaining the dreams that we all wanted.
And I would say for family members who are dealing with somebody who has an addiction problem, don't give up on them.
No.
Shower them with compassion, understanding. Don't judge them. Don't hammer them with condemnation. You just don't give up on them, because if you can walk them through that valley, you're not going to be disappointed when they come out on the other end. You're really, really not. So please, family members of people, get that book. I highly recommend that book, and just keep showing compassion and love for that person, because it's a dark, dark place to be in that very few people can understand. It's easy to look at somebody with an addiction problem and think they're disgusting or they're unredeemable, but it's not true. You just have to keep showering them with love all the time.
Absolutely. See, one of the things that AA has done, and now we're taking leaps and bounds behind it, because it's the National Institute on Drug Abuse that has actually come out and declared that addiction is a disease of the brain that could be managed and treated. This is not mumbo jumbo. This comes from the government. Is that an addict is beating himself or herself up 10 times more than whatever you say. to them. A person who is depressed is beating themselves up 10 times more than whatever you say to them. These are no longer social, moral diseases. What's wrong with you? You've got a great family. You've got a movie career. You've got films. You've got Golden Globe Awards. You've got money in the bank. What's wrong with you? This is a disease. And the sooner we get it out of the social moray, and put it into the medicine, science moray, the better chance we are going to have for healing instead of condemning.
Right. And I would say this, I don't want to mention who the person was, but I had somebody, whenever I mentioned that Robin Williams had committed suicide because he was depressed, they said, what did he have to be depressed about?
Exactly.
Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, the final slab of choice that on computers, internet, professional wrestlers, and not just even tourist style. It doesn't matter whether a cartoon comes from, as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to just read two together.